This is Too Much Confidence with Henry J, in which we express our thoughts, open our minds. I am truly blessed to have a confident attitude in which I hope will inspire and conspire boldness, greatness, and openness. Thanks again for tuning in.
Now, do you need some intro music?
Are you gonna do? Hey, I want you to be who you are, man. Like, if you want to do intro, let's do some intro, and
Okay.
and we'll just start it off. What is this? Did you make a special song? You know what? That's what I need you to do. I need you to make my intro.
Okay.
Okay, so okay.
What are the words? Do you believe in Journey? She's got too much confidence, baby.
Hey!
I like wait for I know to live your dream, live your extra life.
Hey, I like it. Hey, get it. Extra life. I like the intro. Thank you, Hilary. Thank you for being a part of this episode of Too Much Confidence with Henry J. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no worries. You look very nice. I know I told you that earlier, but you like did it up for me, girl. Like you kind of jazzed it out and everything. And I love it. You look absolutely amazing. And thank you for that intro song. I'm definitely going to have to like chop it up and add it to this podcast because I love it so much. So thank you so much. And if you want to, just introduce yourself.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So my name is Hilary Palmer. I'm a lawyer living in Nelson, which is a small town on the top of the South Island of New Zealand, Aotearoa. And Journey and I have been friends for about 2 years or even longer since we met on a safari in Africa.
Oh yeah, we did. We did a safari, girl. Like I promise you, like one of the main memories that I have of us in that safari. Well, I have like two. The first one is like I was like we were forever bonded when we were looking for that rhino and we had to pee in the Serengeti and like everyone got out of the Jeep and our asses was up in the air while we were peeing. I was so scared that something was gonna bite me in my butt, and I was like, "Yeah, we are bonded for life."
Those zebras were way too close.
I know. It was like crazy. That and then like it's so many memories. And then like when we did that live video when we stopped at that store and we did Britney Spears, I forgot what song. We did a lot of sing-alongs on that safari.
Yeah, I think one of the best sing-alongs is when we got kind of told off by our tour guide for criticizing
Arthur. Was his name Arthur?
Accommodations. And
Yeah.
so we're all feeling a bit like, so we say, shake it off.
Shake it off.
Really
Right. Let's
live your extra life.
No, that's cool. Let's okay, yeah. What happened there? Okay, so who was our tour guide? Our tour guide was Arthur. Was it Arthur? All right, yeah. Arthur. And can you just share with the listeners like what basically happened? Because you know, now that I look back at it, I'm like
accommodation, which we weren't advised of when we paid for and booked this tour, but when we were in our Jeeps in the Serengeti, Arthur announced to us the name of the accommodation we'd be staying in at Dar es Salaam. So we looked it up online and read the reviews, and they included comments such as, "This is a good place to go if you like getting robbed and you like cheap prostitutes."
It was a brothel. I just
it was a brothel.
I'm not standing a brothel.
So we all got a bit upset and sort of raised this. So this is actually really upsetting, and we're quite anxious to stay here as a group of young women touring through Africa, can't we just stay somewhere that's not a brothel? And he was extremely upset with us, and really offended that we would question his authority and question his decision making.
Yeah.
So he had a bit of a go at us. So we shook it off to Taylor Swift.
Yeah, we shook it off. Like, it was like, what, our last day there, and I can tell we were like, I just felt the tension. The tension was like in the Jeep, and I was like, I'll be damned if I paid all this money and I have tension on the last few days in the Serengeti. And I just start blasting some T Swift, shake it off, and like we got our asses up and we got out of our funk with some T Swift and Taylor Swift. I thought that was just like an amazing experience. I forgot all about that, girl. Like, damn.
It was medicinal. So later that day, we actually ended up at the accommodation, and I was made to eat some humble pie. Arthur was right. It really wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad. Yeah.
It was actually fine. And we all had a room together. So, there was safety in that. So I had to tell him, like, no, actually, you were right. And we are happy to stay here. Yeah. And he absolutely exploded at me. And it was just night, and he was screaming in my face, and I became really upset, and I started crying. And one of the women on our tour group, Kim, she tried to come into the room, and he actually physically pushed her out of the room. He was so angry. But then my knight in shining armor came into the room. It was Journey.
Who was it? It was me. I came and I gotta save the day. What the hell? I was like,
I think he was a bit intimidated by you, but he definitely wasn't intimidated by me. So,
because you're like what? You're like 4. You're like 4 feet. How tall are you? You're almost 5 feet, so you're like 4'11", and I'm like 5'8", and I'm a big girl, and like I came and just kind of just de-escalated the situation. I didn't realize how upset you were, with that. I thought you guys were just having a disagreement. I didn't realize it was like that serious.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it was just a combination of things, like the way that he came across was just probably a huge cultural clash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I kind of explained that to you guys too, just because he was a Black tour guide from Africa, and you're a white woman, and you're from New Zealand, so you're not really used to Black men, and it was just the way he was talking. It was just his tone. His tone made you feel uncomfortable, or what was it?
Yeah, it was how close he stood to me physically as well, and his tone, and just the fact that he was so much bigger than me, and there was no one else there.
Yeah.
To kind of make me feel like, no, this is actually going to be fine. Like, this is just a disagreement. And
it's just a disagreement, and it was just a clash against cultures. And he was actually, other than that, he was a really cool tour guide. Like, you guys had like a really good relationship at the beginning of our journey together. I think it was 11 days I was with you guys, because after that I left for Egypt, and that was just an overall amazing experience. And I thought it was so cool because I was the only American in that group, and I learned all these new words. I learned uni. I was like, what the hell is uni? You guys and everybody was on a holiday. And, in the States, we call it a vacation. And I was just like, what? Like a holiday, a uni? And I remember that conversation we had, and you talked about food for like over an hour. You talked about food for an hour. We were up in there. We were driving along, and if people don't realize, like, when you're doing a safari in the Serengeti, it's really bumpy, and they actually call that, the nickname for that is the African massage. So most of the time you're in a Jeep, and and you're bumping around, and all you have is the company. Well, it was just basically me, you, and Allie, right? Because it was kind of like the older people were like kind of together, and we were just like in our late 20s, early 30s, and everyone else was in their early 20s. So I thought that was like really cool experience. And then you told me you were a lawyer, and I was like, what in the hell? A lawyer? I thought that was just a badass situation. Like, I think you're a badass automatically. Like, the way you tell me about what goes on in New Zealand and how progressive you guys are. Like, I think that's like absolutely amazing. I think it's something you told me. You told me you guys have what it's called pussy. Is it a pussy riot or it's something? what was
it? Is a Russian band, a Russian rioting, very left wing, very pro people of color rights, pro Indigenous people rights, and pro LGBTQIA plus rights.
okay.
And they're actually international. They're an incredible band. They had gigs
Really?
signed up in Brazil, but at the last minute that pulled through and the election came through.
Oh, okay.
So they rebooked and played in all these small places in New Zealand. And out of all places, they played in Nelson in a tiny church. It was a fantastic gig.
Nelson is so pretty. In case our listeners don't know, I actually visited Hilary in her hometown of Nelson. I visited you, 2018. That was like, let me just say, being a Black person from America, when I arrived in Auckland, I felt okay because, I travel solo. But when I was going to Nelson, I was a little scared because I was like, I'm the only Black person here. I feel so scared and intimidating, but everyone was so welcoming. Like the place I stayed at, the hostel was absolutely gorgeous. It was like decorated like breakfast in Tiffany's, and the host was so nice. Like everyone I met was so nice. And I didn't have that perspective because, growing up in America, if you go to a predominant all white small town, you usually kind of, will sense a little racism there. And for me to go to Nelson, and we had that day together where we ate at the pub. We had a meat pie, I think. A meat pie? Yeah, we had a meat pie. And then like I went to your office and I thought that was cool. And then we walked along the beach and everything. I was like, this is like a dream to like live in. Can you tell people more about Nelson? Yeah.
It's a beautiful place, very small, probably about 50,000 people population. It's on the beach. It's really beautiful, lots of walking, mountain biking, and skiing in the winter. But I'm really pleased you had such a positive experience because Nelson is known as being predominantly white and having definitely a large population of white people. Somewhere like Auckland, even Christchurch, or in Wellington, it's more of a melting pot. You're more likely to see Black people there and just generally more people of colour.
Yeah.
So coming from Nelson, it's there definitely is racist issues here. But there are all throughout New Zealand. And really that comes from our history. We have a really troublesome and concerning history where there's been serious grievances, many of which have not been redressed, particularly against Māori people, but also against Pacifica and Chinese and other minorities.
Can you go into more details of the Māori people for the people who are not familiar with New Zealand? Like Māori people, these are the natives of New Zealand, basically, or?
Well, Māori people discovered New Zealand before Pakeha, which means people with white skin, like me, and the exact history of how they came here is not completely known, and definitely not known by someone like me, but a historian might be able to give a more detailed account. But essentially, Māori people were living in New Zealand. They had very strong traditions, and they were very advanced, particularly given the size of the population. For example, they had better hygiene practices than Western society did at that time. Just as an example, when white people came to New Zealand, they essentially invaded, and there was huge cultural misunderstandings and huge instances of white people taking advantage of Māori people. For example, one of the biggest grievances, which still continues today, it still continues to have a negative effect today, was the different treatment of land in a Māori, tikanga Māori, which means like Māori worldview, and a Western worldview. In the Western worldview, you can own land, you can buy it, and it's yours. Yeah. In the Māori worldview, that was not the case. The land was considered Papatūānuku, which is a god, and you couldn't own her. You could live on her and have the resource, which is a taonga, like a treasure. And this misunderstanding was taken advantage of by Westerners who attempted to trade large sections of highly valued land, which was important for food, resources, living, with things like blankets and guns.
Wow.
So that kind of thing was going on, but eventually there were all kinds of other issues that arose. After a while, there was a treaty entered into between the white people and Māori. It was essentially between the Queen of England and Māori chiefs. It's called the Treaty of Waitangi. It's a hugely controversial but incredibly important document. And there's many reasons why it's so controversial. One of the most important, in my view, is that it was translated from Māori to English. Words that aren't direct translations, because those words didn't exist. Those words don't really exist.
Yeah, the power of words. Yeah.
Yeah, and this created huge issues. So Māori, under the Māori vision, were promised chiefmanship over their own people, like self-governance. But this wasn't in the English vision.
Wow.
So
it's kind of similar. I just know when I went to Hawaii, I was talking to some natives there in Hawaii, and how like the natives that are staying in Hawaii are kind of getting driven out by, you know, I would just say people with money, a lot of money. I don't want to necessarily, you know, generalize it all to white people, but it's mainly is white people, but they're kind of getting driven out their homeland based on foreigners just coming up and taking the valuable assets of it. So like, what is the state today of like the land situation? Or is it kind of similar? Like I know a couple of weeks ago here in America, one of our states is called Oklahoma. It's one of our neighbors here in Texas. And they had a U.S. Supreme ruling that half of Oklahoma will now be given back to the Native Americans. That's their land and stuff. So,
well,
yeah.
I think the situation in America and in New Zealand is different, but there are still a lot of parallels. New Zealand government has taken a lot of action to stand up for the rights of the tangata whenua, the people of the land, and a lot of land has been returned to its rightful owners.
Okay,
but percentage-wise, the percentage of land which has been returned is embarrassingly small. But it's very difficult now. People have been living there for years, and it's been sold multiple times, so it's really difficult to redress these grievances. But problems still occur in that local government and national government uses tools of colonialism.
Yeah, you're right. Colonialism. Yeah.
Is that a word? Colonizing is still happening. It's still a problem, and there are still tools which are used to give effect to that problem. So, for example, zoning land which could be very sacred and special to certain iwi, which is a word that loosely translated means tribe. Certain groups of Māori people might be zoned rural or business or something like that. And that doesn't give it the protection that it needs to stop people building or having animals on it which pollute the land or pollute the riverways adjacent to the land. So that kind of thing, those sorts of laws and rules, they come across as very legitimate in our society, and they're accepted, and they generally tend to be quite necessary and reasonable. But they can also be used as tools to oppress a minority. And to improve the situation for the people that are already benefiting from our system.
Is that what's going on? I know when we were, when I was in Nelson, we drove in your car and those steep hills you guys had up over there, and then there were some good areas of town, because I know at that time you were looking for a house to buy, and there were not so good areas in town. And in America, I don't know if systemic racism has now been a big term that now more people are using, and America is realizing that they have group minorities with systematic racism, such as red zoning particular areas where only minorities live in, and where there's less resources as far as health and food and stuff like that. Is that kind of similar, or is it a little bit different? Like, where is the, the valuable land? I'm pretty sure the colonizers are taking that valuable land. Where in the region is that located? Or is it all throughout every city, or?
It's different throughout all of New Zealand. And I think that there are some parallels in that in terms of how systematic racism works and how it works in New Zealand. But I don't know that I can comment directly on that. I think it's more from a Pākehā white-skinned person's perspective. The issue in New Zealand is it really runs deep. And we continue to try and redress it and put things in place to improve things. That only happens when we have a slightly more left-wing government. So, for example, at the moment we have a party in power called Labour, and Labour has always historically been slightly more left-wing. At other times, though, we have a party in power called National, which is always known as being very white and pretty far right. And when they're in power, there tends to be a real slowdown of steps taken to redress systematic racism in New Zealand. But the symptoms are here and they're very real. So, for example, Māori women in prison, it's one of the highest populations of, in terms of how many, the population in prison versus the population in the world. In the world. So that's a real problem. Generally, Māori prison statistics are very upsetting. Health statistics are also incredibly unfairly weighted. And all of that, to me, it really can oversimplifies it, but it can be boiled down to breaches of the treaty. Stealing land, stealing taonga, other treasures, and taking away the Māori culture. So I had a really important conversation with my friend Anika, who I believe you're hopefully having on one of your podcasts.
Yes, thank you for that connect. I appreciate that. I'm so anxious. Yeah, that is going to be, I'm ready for that show too.
Yeah, so she is an incredible Māori woman living in Nelson, living her extra life. One of the things we talked about was the shame that Māori feel when it comes to their culture, particularly, for example, their language. So this was a real issue used in early settlers' days and going much later than it should have, where Māori children were punished for speaking Māori. A generational issue where the parents who had experienced that abuse in their childhood passed on that lesson to their children so that their children wouldn't suffer this punishment. Not to speak Māori because it would, get them in trouble and have them punished.
What type of punishments would occur if they were to speak Māori? What would happen? What type of punishments? Well, jail time, or they would just be mocked and made fun of?
I understand that this is more a schoolyard thing, so it would be in those things like getting the cane.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it went deeper than that. If there was higher level punitive measures, I'm not sure. It's definitely something I'd be interested in looking at.
Yeah, but it's kind of similar to here in America, especially in Texas. We have a really high population of Hispanic people, and I was an ESL teacher for 2 years, and basically I have a lot of Hispanic friends. But some of my students, they don't know Spanish. That's their native language, and they don't know it just because of the stigmatization that they receive or their parents receive for speaking that. I would say now I feel like it's definitely becoming a little bit better. I think this actually was cool. I don't know. Well, it's not, the situation is not cool, but one thing I have been noticing, I don't know if you're familiar with Vanessa Gillian and her situation. She was a U.S. She was a U.S. I want to say she was a military personnel, and basically she got killed on a base here in Texas, in Fort Hood. She got killed, and she was Hispanic, and she went missing. I think she was missing for months, and they finally found her body. It was dismembered. So now a new protest a lot of protesting is going around in America to reform the military. and her mom speaks nothing but Spanish. So it's been quite interesting to have her mom on the national news here in America, and local news outlets just speaking nothing but Spanish without a translator. And I felt like that was, that was a good side effect of a tragedy. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, language is so important, and it teaches us so much about each other and about our
it's your culture.
Yeah, and it's a real shame that shame has been installed generationally for Māori people speaking Te Reo, the language.
Exactly.
And what's happening now is now in this generation and in these years, it's very encouraged to speak Te Reo. It's a huge privilege to be able to learn and be able to have access to the teaching, to know someone who can speak Te Reo is incredible. It's a beautiful language. It's absolutely fantastic.
I need to hear it. I feel like I want to hear it. Do you know any words in that language that you can share? Yeah, shall we somewhere? Tell me, what is it? What you were telling me?
I've been doing some lessons. So, okay. Aroha means love.
Okay, aroha. Okay. Aroha? Say it again.
Yeah.
Did I say it right? Aroha.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, aroha. Okay, that's cool.
That's your word of the day. It's a good word. Aroha means love.
Okay.
So, but something Anika raised with me, and I think she'll raise it with you as well, is that for me to learn Te Reo, I just feel awesome. I just like, man, I'm so great. Like, I'm doing this extracurricular and I'm getting this language.
Yeah.
There's no shame. I have no generational shame associated with learning this language, because it's never been a problem for me. It's never been something I've been punished for speaking, or that my parents or grandparents have been. But for a lot of Māori people, they do feel that shame, and it's really difficult for them to reconnect with their iwi or their marae. And I don't really know how to translate those words into English to give them justice, but it can be really difficult. So that shame is a huge thing. So we were talking on one of I love our chats that we have.
I know we have like amazing chats, probably like once every like 3 or 4 months. We have like a really good chat. And I told you the last chat we had, it was like inspirational because you were walking, and I was like, well, shit, if she's walking, I'm going to walk too. And when I was walking, my aunt, that's when I was staying with my mom. I was in the country. She saw me walking, so she took it up a notch and she started mowing the whole yard. So it was good. I was like, Hilary, you're like inspiring half across the globe for us to get our asses up and move around. So thank you so much. I'm so here for it. Yeah.
But one thing we were talking about, which I love talking about with you, is being a good ally.
Yes.
And I think that this is something that all white people who want to basically be on the right side of history struggle with. It's hard to be a good ally. And the reason that it's hard is because we always have to open our minds and our hearts to learning more about what it means to be a good ally. That's the most important thing. I was speaking to another friend about this, my friend Daniel, the other night, and just asking for some views to raise in this podcast. And one thing he said was, if you want to learn what it's like to be someone who is different to you, so for me, someone who's Black, or someone who has a disability, or doesn't speak English, or is illiterate, he said it's really not that hard. All you have to do is read and listen.
Yeah. Read and listen and like get to know one another. I think I think we're right now at a time which is a crazy time. 2020 is just like it's like turning everything upside down and everything. But I brought this point up a couple of weeks ago with I think on Facebook or something, where I said, I can understand white people not understanding someone else's perspective, because you guys never had to be put in a position to understand anyone else's type of perspective. I mean, for so long as the ruling race of the world, I mean, a lot of people had to conform to you. I remember I made a video of this saying that no longer will I just like change who I am as a person, change my voice, change the way I talk or my mannerisms to make white people feel comfortable around me, because that time is up. you know, as a Black person here in America, I've had to learn the white customs in order to get along, to fit along. And then you also have your Black culture to learn. And then I like so many different cultures. I learned Hispanic cultures and like being a traveler and stuff, that definitely helps and stuff. But I'm like, I grew up always having to be in two worlds, meaning that I had to know what was on MTV and then what was on BET, which are networks here in America, if you're not familiar with those. But you have to be hip on popular culture and Black culture. And I feel like, you know, I was in a debate with a person because he's a conservative, and we're no longer Facebook friends because of this. But basically, we're no longer tolerating. I know for me, for example, I'm no longer tolerating ignorance as an excuse for you not to know about my struggle, not to know about my pain, not to know about my history, because you know about your history. Now it's time for you to do the same thing as I and learn about my history. And because I think I was talking to a friend, Ashley. We have a very diverse friend group. So we are friends with Black people, white people, and everything. And it was a difficult position to be in at the beginning of all the riots after George Floyd's death, because you spoke out and you're so used to being seen a different way. So when you start speaking out about your community, you can offend some of your white friends. And I finally came to the conclusion, if I offend them, then they're not my friends anyway, because I've been offended my whole life by this oppressive country. So, but like talking to you, like literally gives me that encouragement to be able to be me and to speak out my voice. Because I think our last conversation you were talking about, I was like, yeah, you know, I can be seen like as a bitch or something if I talk this way or this certain way. And you're like, well, you're going to be seen a bitch any type of way, so you might as well just be you. And I was like, that is the ally I need.
What we were talking about in that conversation was the stereotype, oh, she's just an angry Black woman. It's a horribly damaging stereotype, because it's saying so much. And one of the things it's saying, which I hate, is that it's wrong to be angry. But it's so right to be angry.
It's so very right to be angry, yeah. And it's like we have a lot of shit to be angry about. So it really is actually offensive when you say that I'm an angry Black woman for speaking my mind and speaking my voice, because the society that I have lived in has created me to feel this way. And for me to suppress it actually does more damage to me versus being able to let it out. Like sometimes I want to be a fucking Karen and I want to speak to a fucking manager and I want to say that I do not like this shit. This shit does not make me feel good, and I want something in return. Give me some money, give me an exchange, give me some reparations, give me something in return, because like you literally have devastated our community, and you want us to be silent about it. And I feel like sometimes if I question someone's perspective of me, I'm automatically seeing like I have an attitude, and it's just like, dang, we can't have opinions, we can't question anyone. You literally want us to just sit here, make you have fun, because you know they use Black people as entertainment, and then nothing of the other sorts. So sorry, that was my rant.
Well, it's important to be angry. This is I really believe that these riots happening in America, it's a revolution, and it's time. In fact, it's late, and this revolution is coming, and there's so much to be angry about. I mean, George Floyd, he would just be rolling over in his grave, kicking and screaming, if we weren't angry about the horrible crime that occurred there, and the ongoing police brutality issue that you have in America. And all of the race issues. I mean, it's crazy to me that there's still Ku Klux Klan in America.
That's crazy, right? And they're just now banning the Confederate flag. Like, and when you think about it, because you're so used to like having it. I remember being in like the 4th grade while I was in school. And I remember this girl, I remember her name, everything. She came to school and she had her shirt on with the Confederate flag. And I was just like, that does not make me feel good. And she was like, this is my heritage at 4th grade, in 4th grade. This is my heritage and this is what I want to represent. Yeah, and it's just like, well, your heritage, first and foremost, is about a bunch of losers who can't accept defeat. And your heritage is so offensive to the people because that symbolizes that you still wanted slavery. And I remember after that conversation while I was in fourth grade, I was like, well, I need to stop, questioning people because that's just her heritage and I need to respect it. So I'm so happy about what's occurring now, where we're just like, no, we're not accepting any type of form of an ounce of racism or discrimination in any sorts of any type of symbol or anything like that. So like being from New Zealand, like how did you feel or how did you guys feel when you saw what was going on in America? Like how did you know what was going on? Did you was it social media? Was it on your national news or like what was going on?
Yeah, it's all over the news, which is fantastic. That's huge. It was a very sad day when we heard about what happened to George Floyd. But of course, it wasn't a surprise. A lot of us have seen the, I think it's Michael Moore's documentary where he talks about police brutality against Black people. And he, in that short documentary, he recognizes that one of the dangers, of course he's being tongue-in-cheek, is that Black people have wallets and it's getting their wallet and the police go, oh, he's got a gun and shoot him. So he spent the documentary handing out Dayglow bright orange wallets.
Wow.
As obviously, a safety measure, but very dark tongue-in-cheek. So when we heard this news, I don't think anyone was surprised, but we were all absolutely horrified. And it just feels so depressing. It feels so deflating. Like this keeps happening in America. This is an ongoing issue. We have race problems in New Zealand, but they're not as highlighted, maybe because guns are very uncommon and police don't tend to have guns. I don't know, but it feels hopeless. It feels like, well, this is always going to happen. This is just continuous. Nobody seems to be doing anything about this. There doesn't seem to be any avenue for people to complain and for that complaint to actually work and have an impact and an effect on the next victim. So
it's like people didn't start listening until they start rioting or having protests. And it's sad that it had to escalate that. And then you start criticizing the rioting. But it's like you weren't getting attention any other type of ways. At a certain point, people are going to boil over where it's like, look, I think my perspective was like, you're going to kill me over a pack of Skittles. Trayvon Martin, he got killed over a pack of Skittles. You're going to, so I feel like Generation Z, which I'm so proud of. I always get hyped up when I talk about Generation Z because Generation Z is like absolutely amazing to me. Like I am so fascinated with this generation. Like I'm on TikTok and I'm just like looking through everything they're doing and stuff. And then for them to go out there and protest. And I say this a lot of times to friends, like you have to realize this generation only grew up seeing people get murdered, seeing Black men get murdered. Like I didn't grow up like that. Like I grew up, I was a Backstreet Boys fan. Like I grew up with the Backstreet Boys. I grew up listening to Pop, TRL. But it's like every 3 months, every month, every day, every week, they're seeing Black men get killed. And now it's like this generation is very much integrated in where they consider white people, they're not their friends, but their brothers or sisters. Like that's how close the kinship is. I know my brother, he's 21, he's a Generation Z. He's very alternative. He listens to rock, heavy metal and everything, and his closest friend is white, and I know that friend will ride with my brother, you know what I mean? Like they will ride it out. But I'm just like, if you see all this happening all the time, it's going to come to a point where it's like, well, you're going to kill me anyway, so if you're going to kill me, I'm going to go down fighting. And I think that was really what sparked everyone to protest during a global pandemic. While you can risk your life.
You've got this situation where there's these atrocities going on and you put on your Karen hat and say, well, I want to speak to the manager. And the manager's just as racist and just as entrenched in the system. And there's no Clifford wants to be involved in this podcast, obviously. There's no redress. So what are your choices? And it always comes down to choice. And in this case, there's no choice. So you have to riot, and protest. And I'm so impressed by the bravery of people who are rioting and protesting. And I really hope that it changes, forces change. The thing was, Obama, when Trump got into power, and everyone was extremely upset, obviously. Aside from his supporters, he said, presidents can hardly change anything. But who does change things is large groups of angry people.
Yeah. I think I'm glad you brought up Trump, because when he got elected, I was like, I just laughed. I was like, okay, this is going to be a joke. And then when he started like acting out, creating policies, he like literally runs the White House like a mobster. Like, I'm like, I've seen this before. I'm used to being around people who are in that type of area, line of work or whatever. And I'm like, you're running this like a mob. And but I never saw people in the streets. Like, people will complain about social media. On social media, people will talk about how much they hate Trump and all this kind of stuff. But I'm just like, you guys are not, I'm like, people are not going to be fed up. Like, I'm going to know it's people are really fed up when I see people out in the streets protesting and burning shit down. So when I finally saw people burning shit down, I was like, finally, we have a lot of distractions to gear us off. And then we eat a lot of food. Like, we're very big people. We like to eat. And so once that all was taken away, it's like we had no more distractions. So you literally have to face reality, and the reality stanked. And it's like, well, I have time now. Like, I'm not, Americans are very a work prone society where work is basically our life. And, their life. I made a choice. I made a vow, like when I was 30, I was like, I'm having work-life balance, because I do not want to be 65 and everything associated with me is from my work. Like, I want everything associated with me as a balance. So, I thought that was really cool. I was able to like do all that traveling and stuff to help me create that balance and stuff. But it's a lot of Americans where their life is, nothing but work. So for us now no longer to have those distractions, I was like, this is God sent. Like, COVID-19 is a beast. Now, trust and believe COVID-19 is a beast. And I respect that beast to the fullest. But that beast definitely has allowed a lot of change that is occurring not only in America, but around the world, that would not occur if COVID-19 was not here.
Quite possibly. I think there's definitely a certain irony that during this horrific pandemic, people of color and allies are risking their lives to riot and protest and be in groups of people, which, as we all know, is a danger. And then very predominantly white groups of far-right extremists are risking their lives to protest wearing a mask.
I can't believe that's a protest. Like, the logic behind it makes no sense. Like, I'm like, you're literally protesting to get sick. Like, we're protesting to actually save lives, but you're protesting to get sick because you feel like, I heard on one report, they feel like it's an act of submission to wear a mask.
Yeah, it's pathetic. But it's this really incredibly interesting juxtaposition with the comparison of protesting for individual rights and protesting for group rights. Mm-hmm. So this individualism, this selfish way of being, allows people to create these views such as, I'm not wearing a mask because it's my right and my face, and I'm not covering my face. And so you have people protesting that, and it's really quite pathetic. But it's also incredibly damaging. Like, if one person's not wearing a mask, they're putting other people in a group at risk. And it's just selfish. They're also putting themselves at risk. So, again, ridiculous. But you have these people protesting police brutality against Black people. They're protesting a group thing. This is about a group of people who are targeted again and again and again by police, unfairly, brutally, and who are killed by the police, unjustifiably so. So they're together. They're all risking their lives again in a similar way, because they're in a close group. They're breathing on each other and possibly touching. And they're risking their lives because they're dealing with police and that they're rioting and protesting. but they're risking their lives for the lives of everyone within this group, the Black American community.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a justified cause. That is an important cause. And that will have an ongoing effect through generations. So it's quite incredible that you have these two very prominent groups, or prominent in the media is covering both of them, who are both protesting. And I would say probably see the people who are protesting not wearing a mask probably see their protests just as justified as those protesting against police brutality against Black people. But the reality is one group is protesting this group right for the greater good, risking their own personal, individual safety for the greater good, the good of the community. And the other are risking their own personal safety and the safety of everyone else
for personal comfort.
Personal comfort. So I think that's really interesting. And I think that position, that selfish position, has to come from a privileged position. In other words, white people.
It comes from first and foremost, American society is always individualism. That's something that we strive about. That's one of our main key points. We are freedom, 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 freedom. But not freedom for all, freedom from some. So now the freedom for some is being violated by putting a cloth over your face, not only to save your life, but like you said, to save the life of your family members, save the life of other people in your community. And you're protesting, not to wear this. Or, during the beginning of the pandemic here in the States, after like a couple of weeks in lockdown, they were protesting not being able to have haircuts, not being able to go to get a pedicure, while Black and brown communities are literally losing their life because of COVID-19. So it's like it's just, this basically gave me an opportunity. This pandemic was just to be like, wow, people really think that differently from me. Like that.
Important point, Jenny. Like we all do think differently from each other, especially if you're brought up with different culture. You have a different worldview, for example, because you're white. And part of that, I used to have this little badge when I was a kid, and I really liked it. And it was these children all holding hands in a row, and it said, "Peace begins with friendship." And I think that's, and understand, develop compassion for people who are different from you, is to and put a person to that profile. Like, it's not just Black woman living in America. It's your friend Journey, and you don't want her to have to deal with a hugely racist weighted system.
That's
so
true.
It becomes easier to become a better ally, I think, if you make more sense.
Yeah, I think, you open your mind, your thought, and you just get out of that self-denial of that, racism actually exists. Unlike, I don't know if you're familiar with Fox News, but Fox News says racism is not real. And it's just like, no, it exists. It's like, it's a real thing. Like, we're getting shot and we're getting killed and we're not getting jobs and half our population is being incarcerated. It's just like, it's a way of life that I think a lot of Black people in America has been just accustomed to living. And it's like, we're just surviving. We just want to survive. And it's like, no more surviving. We're ready to live. Like, we want to live by the promises that we learn in American history, where all men are created equal, where we all have the same rights. That's what you told us in history class. That's what we want to live by. Like,
So, Fox News, that I understand, the only thing I know about it is that Trump watches it. So that's allowed to be aired. This is someone airing that as
that's a right-wing news broadcasting channel, and they say a lot of propaganda. I really don't watch it that much, because if you are kind of mainstream and you're kind of up to what's going on, one thing that I noticed, with my travels and everything, which makes America so great, is our diversity. So we are going to have these challenges because out of all the nations in the world, we're the most diverse. So of course we're going to have the most controversy, because we are literally the melting pot, and we're trying to get along with everyone. And that's something that's really hard to do. I know it'll be like, sometimes I'll go to these countries and I'm the only Black person and everyone else looks the same. And I'm just like, well, of course it's going to be easy here because everyone is the same. But when you're in America and everyone is different, it is hard if you are not open-minded. And if you're closed-minded, it will be hard to like make any type of changes, whatever. But let's talk about your prime minister. I like that chick. I want to talk about her. I remember you telling me about her when we were in the safari, in the Serengeti and stuff. And I was like, what? She a baby mama and the baby daddy take care of the kid, then she running the fucking country? Like, what is this? What is New Zealand's about? What?
Yeah, just within Ardern she's one of the youngest female prime ministers, which is our vision of president, sort of. I think in the world, but she's the leader of the Labour Party, which is our slightly left wing, more kind of mid, really, party. And she has faced some serious challenges during her time as prime minister. She's still prime minister, and we're coming up to elections soon, so it'll be an opportunity.
When is elections for you guys?
It's coming up in the next few months.
Oh, so like our election is November. Is that like the same time that you guys have elections, November, or?
No, I don't think so. I've got my voting paper right here.
Like democracy at its finest. Oh, I love it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, but yeah. So she has faced some serious challenges. One of the biggest and most horrific challenge that she faced was the terrorist attack in Christchurch, New Zealand. So a white Australian man came over and committed a horrific act of terrorism in one of the Christchurch mosques on a particular religious holiday. He killed, I think the number was 52 innocent people, including children. And he was arrested, and we don't publish his name because we don't want to give him notoriety. And instead all the heroes and the people that were killed with their names were published.
I thought that was so badass of how she handled that situation, that crisis, because I was like, I don't even know how the guy looks like. Like the when it happened, her initial reaction was like, we're not going to give him the notoriety or the attention that he sought after. Like, we're going to focus on the victims. And after that, then like some legislation was passed where like New Zealand banned, I want to say they banned rifle. What happened? Yeah.
They our gun laws were seriously tightened to come up to par to just about meet Australians. Australian has the strictest gun laws in the world. So it was all about banning semi-automatic rifles and any type of automatic rifle. So we still have a lot of hunters in New Zealand, a lot of people on farms who need guns within their work. But nobody needs semi-automatic rifles. And it was those types of guns. I'm not really a gun person, so I don't really know, but that this terrorist used in his attacks. And I keep seeing this wonderful meme that I really like, which has America, we can't ban guns because of reasons. And then Jacinda Ardern, hold my baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hold my baby. Because we can, and we have to, because we cannot have this happen again. It's the opportunity. This should have happened years ago, and who knows, we might have had a different situation if it had happened. But she used the opportunity to basically say, look, this is what happens when we have these guns available. And there's no legitimate use for them whatsoever.
No. It's like it's a power high. It's a cowardly power that is just not needed for us. So I salute your administration. I salute your government for taking that initiative to outlaw those.
Yeah, we were really pleased with how my friends and the people that I associate with were really pleased with how that was dealt with. It was such a tragedy and caused so much harm. So I hope that the families of all the people, those innocent people that were killed, know that their lives made a huge difference in the safety of New Zealanders because those guns were banned. And it also, I just want to pay credit to the families and the people that were affected by that horrible massacre. It also created more awareness about what it's like to be a minority in New Zealand.
Did it open the dialogue more, do you feel like,
Yeah.
between communities? Yeah.
Hugely. Like we had there was special days, a race unity day in Nelson. There was a dinner at a mosque in Nelson. My mum was invited and she spoke. She was, these were hugely emotional days.
Yeah.
But it just opened dialogue and created some insight into the lives of others and the struggles that they face, including being at risk, seriously being at risk, simply because of their religion and culture.
Yeah.
So, I just want to pay homage to the victims and their families and how important their lives were. So, Jacinda Ardern, she handled that well. We've had COVID-19.
Yes.
Now, New Zealand did have an advantage, which was that because we're isolated geographically, it came here late. So we were able to see what happened in Italy, and we were really affected by that. We can't have that happen here. For example, in Nelson, while we've got a small population, about 50,000, we only have 6 ventilators in the hospital.
Wow.
So that means that if there's 10 people needing ventilators, 4 of them have to die because we have a lack of equipment. So when that was happening overseas, there was huge fear, huge anxiety, both locally and nationally, about what was going to happen here, and controversy. Some people saying, oh, this is a hoax, or some people saying this isn't really happening, it's not as bad, the media's playing it out so much worse than it is, that kind of thing. And what I believe a good leader does is a good leader is aware of her limitations and deals with them appropriately to overcome those limitations. So Jacinda Ardern, great leader, excellent communicator, very intelligent. She's not a scientist and she's not a doctor, but she's aware of that, unlike your clown prime minister, president. She's aware of that. She goes, okay, I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor. So what can I do to overcome this barrier? Because that's the knowledge that's required at this time. And what did she do? She sought expert opinions. She sought expert advice and she followed that expert advice. And for that reason, our country, our Prime Minister developed the administration developed a 4-tiered scheme to manage.
So it came nationally. The plan came nationally. It wasn't up to local governments to make the plan. It came out nationally. Okay, that makes a big difference.
I mean, obviously, you've got to remember that our country is like one small American state.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it's national. So the 4-level scheme went up and up and up to level 4, so top level. And at each layer, there was different levels of rules in terms of fighting this infection. So level 4 was the most extreme. Borders were shut down. Only New Zealanders could come home, and they had to be quarantined for 2 weeks if they came home. No handshakes, no kissing, no hugging, no touching. No going to work. So you could work from home with a computer, but you couldn't go into the office. You could only work if you worked at what was considered an essential service, which basically meant you supplied food. So you worked at a supermarket, for example, supplied medicine, you worked at a chemist, or you're a doctor or nurse. That was really all. So that meant for most of us, we were at home. Some of us were able to work from home, and some weren't. You couldn't drive anywhere except for to the supermarket or the doctor. So that meant that you could only travel by going for an exercise, going for a walk or a bike ride within your...
So, like, what was, like, the air travel like? Did air travel shut down, or, like, how was that? Oh, air travel was shut down?
Yeah, there was some exceptions. Yeah, some exceptions, like you need to go from a small hospital to a big center or something like that, but other than that, it was shut down.
You guys did this for like what, 2 months, right? 2 months straight. Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't. I mean, I live around the corner from my parents, so I couldn't even go and see them.
Wow.
So there was some terminology developed, and what we described it was being in your bubble. So in our bubble, I had myself, my partner, and my cat, and that was who I associated with physically. Of course, I still called my mum, but those were the only people that I touched for that entire period, and who I saw in real life. So yeah, it was hugely restrictive.
But you guys had a plan, and you followed through with the plan, and now you guys can walk around without any masks. You guys are not having protests about wearing masks because, the second wave here is in the States, and especially in Texas, we're getting hit pretty hard because they said we open. No, I'm not going to say we. The Governor Abbott here in Texas, opened up the economy too fast. And I think the economy definitely played a big factor in the reopening of America. So, like, how did New Zealand's economy, was it affected at all because of COVID-19? Yeah.
Seriously affected, and especially some areas such as tourism, because we don't have American tourists. We get a lot of tourists who come from China and Japan. We don't have any of those coming in. We only have local tourism now. So everything is back to normal, but with no tourism, and a lot of people's livelihood have been affected by the shutdown. So, the economic impact has been massive, but it has been less than it would have been if we hadn't taken such severe action. And again, it comes back to the group mentality. We have been referring to ourselves as a team of 5 million. Jacinda Ardern's team of 5 million. That's our entire population.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And like I say, the lockdown was hugely restrictive. It was mentally very challenging, especially for people who couldn't work, people like builders. You can't be a builder from home. So
no, you can't. No.
So it was hugely challenging, but it was for the greater good, for the good of the entire country, and for the good of the future, being able to progress into the future without just having this disease ravaging our population. And I think that these quick rushes back to work, overly fast reopening schools in America, is all about the individual, and it will be extremely harmful.
It's just like individual. It's really about money. That's my take about it. It's just Trump wants to get reelected, and Trump needs a good economy to get reelected. And you can't have a good economy if you can't have people working and stuff like that. But it's just like you said, like New Zealand's economy was affected, but it was affected minor than what it could have been affected if it wasn't held or wasn't treated properly. If you guys weren't in that strict, lockdown. I feel sometimes people fail to realize that in life, you're going to take L's. I call them L's. You're going to lose. And that's just part of life. You're going to have some L's and you're going to have some W's, take the L like a man. I always say, take that L like just take that L. You know what I mean? It's hard to do. It's hard to muster, but it's like if we would have took this L back in March and just had a heavy lockdown, had a national agenda for 2 months, and that's March to May, we would have been out of this, I feel like, by June or July. Now we're going right back into it. I mean, there's talks, that we're possibly going to, Texas, we're possibly going to be going back to lockdown. I feel like we will be going back to lockdown. And I feel like it sucks because I think people fail to realize, like, even the people that support quarantine and support wearing a mask, we are tired of being in our apartments, being in our homes all the time, only seeing certain people. We want to have freedom as well. But once again, we look to the scientists and we listen to what the scientist says and, what they're talking about. We don't look and I hate the fact here in America that a virus that is affecting communities, affecting people are losing their lives, has actually became a political agenda. It's like something that should have united us all literally is dividing us. And it's at a time where we should not be divided. Like But leadership matters. And girl, I'm gonna tell you this right now. Like, I used to hate when I was traveling and I would have my dreads and everything. So people automatically assume I was somewhere from Africa or somewhere, like some country from Africa.
Mhm.
And then, like, when I started talking, they realized I'm from America. The first thing they would say, I hate Trump. I remember being in Egypt. I was in Egypt. I was at a pyramid and I was like looking at like some old architecture and everything. And this woman found out I was American and she was like, Trump did this to our currency. We have no currency. Trump is a bad man. Trump is this. And I'm just like, okay, but I'm not Trump. I'm just a tourist and I'm just trying to like chill out. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I always felt embarrassed. Yeah, I was just being embarrassed. I was like, he is so embarrassing. But then it's kind of, as the leader of the free world, you're actually the leader of the whole entire world. And
America's
his
a
leadership
powerhouse.
sucks. Yeah, the power is there.
America's a powerhouse. And I cannot see how the USA will get out of the COVID situation with an anti-science president. Someone who does not believe in science. Like, it doesn't exist. It's like, oh, I don't believe in hats. Like, wow, they exist and they're real. It's incredibly difficult. He's not a leader. He's a
reality star. He like literally made the world a reality show. I was like, the power of manifestation. Like this, he literally made the world into a reality show, because like the stuff that's going on right now, it's just like, am I watching reality TV? Oh, this is like the real world right now. And I feel as though, my personal perspective is like, I feel as though he knows he is going to lose in November. And instead of bowing out gracefully and doing the best that he can, he is saying, you know what, I'm going to lose anyway. I'm just going to set this whole freaking nation on fire. And he's riling up his base, and his base is getting agitated. And it's scary to think about that, because I feel as though he's not going to step down without a fight. Like, I feel if Biden wins the election, Trump is going to do something not to step down. And that scares me.
Yeah. I think that's totally huge. I better go, but I just want to say, I hope that you and all of your friends vote. I think that's the most powerful thing you can do, is absolutely must vote. That's so important. And don't worry, I'll be voting here in New Zealand.
I like it. Well, thank you, Hilary. Yeah. Thank you for being the guest on Too Much Confidence with Henry J. I definitely appreciate the conversation. I always love when you talk, because I feel like you talk with such a pose, and you have pose, and the way you use your words and your dialect. Like, girl, you put that law degree into work, and you're, very informed and policies and what is occurring on in New Zealand. So thank you so much for being one of my first guests here on the podcast.
Thank you. And I think we could work on the intro.
Yes, we definitely need to work on that intro. I love that intro, girl. Like, I was using music, and I was like, I don't want to be sued for copyright laws. Like, so make me an original piece. I remember, like when I was growing up, I had one of those in our library in our house. I had like a keyboard like thing, and I remember like tuning it up and playing on it and stuff. And so that kind of brought back memories. Yeah, it brought back memories.
A lot of fun. Well, it's been a real pleasure to talk with you, Jenny, and I love learning from you, and I look forward to hearing all of your podcasts.
Okay, awesome sauce. And you have a good day. It's like Tuesday. You're in the future now. So have a good day, and I'll talk to you later, okay?
I'll tell you what happened.
I know, right? What's going to happen? Bye.
Bye.